When I was born in this country, I wasn't a citizen. I wasn't a citizen of this country until I was 17 years old. So that meant that the authorities could and did whatever they liked to me. And when I'm talking about the authorities, I'm talking about welfare and I'm talking about police. They're the main culprits. And also, Mum was very concerned about seeking medical treatment for us, because if you went to a hospital or a doctor or a dentist, they'd call up the authorities and the removal of Aboriginal children would start. I had a brother that was removed because he didn't hear the warning that there was people coming, so they got him. And they got him because the warning was for us to run out the back door, run down the back and dive in a stinking dirty swamp and lay there until Mum said it was safe to come out. He never heard that warning and they took him, and we never saw him again until he was an adult. My mother lost 2 children, young children. I'm a twin. My twin brother passed away when he was 5.5, and I had another brother who died before I was born. Mum had a lot of hurt and pain because of the loss of those children. But when we all slept together in the one bed, not only could I feel the hurt and the pain from my mother, I could feel the guilt, the tossing and turning and the crying because she didn't protect one of her children. And she carried that till the day she passed. And when my brother came back, he wasn't in a position where he could form relationships like the rest of us did. Mum smothered him and protected him and wouldn't let her out of his sight again. So when Mum passed, it wasn't long after that he passed as well. So growing up in this town, I was forever being intimidated and confronted by the police, and they'd pull me up on a regular basis and tell me that I was either drunk or there was something wrong with me, and they would do their best to try and provoke me. They'd tread on my toes, they'd go up on their toes to try and force me to touch them or do something, and they'd say I was drunk, and then I'd plead with them that I wasn't doing anything wrong. They'd chuck me in the back of that police car, and on the way to the police station, they'd tell me that we're going to the police station, you're going to get charged, you'll be before the court, and you'll end up in jail. Or we could go beyond the dealership, the car dealership, and we can sort it out there. I said, the dealership is the most economic option for me, so I took the dealership offer. I went behind there and they flogged me. I stood there while 2 burly police officers flogged me and gave me a good working over, and they said, now, get home to Black Sea. And I said, yes, sir. On the way home, come to the bridge, another police car coming off the bridge. And as they were coming off the bridge, they saw me struggling because of the flogging I got. They didn't know I got a flogging. They pulled up and said, what's wrong with you? I said, I just spoke to the police, sir, I'm on my way home. They said, you drunk? I said, no, sir, I'm not. I'm going home, sir, I just spoke to the police. They took me back to that dealership and they flogged me again. They flogged me so much I couldn't get home. I went and laid down the riverbank and I laid there and stayed there till I knew it was safe to go home. When I think back on it, when I was a young person and a young boy, and Mum would say, go to the shop. And I'm talking before I was at double digits. I'd run up the shop, and on the way to the shop, to get a couple of groceries for Mum, there are white kids that would chuck stones at me and stone me. And I'd come home covered in blood. We couldn't do nothing about it because I wasn't a citizen. I was classed as savage. I was a savage in my own country. And I was a savage until I was 17 years old. And by then all my schooling had finished. Being deprived of proper education at school meant that the school that I went to had a very perfectly clean playground, because I spent most of the time out there running chores, and they weren't concentrating on me getting a decent education. And as far as employment, because I didn't have a proper education, my opportunity of seeking employment opportunities was very limited. So all I had was those labouring jobs, and I had a lot of those. And I didn't think there was any other future for me. I was happy with labouring jobs. It wasn't until I left Grafton and realised that I could, I could go somewhere and be skilled up, and people would treat me a little bit different than they would in a local town. I know that the opportunities were endless down here as far as they were compared to the country. So that was one thing I was pleased with. And that's all Aboriginal people wanted, was an opportunity, because opportunity, gives them a chance to compete for jobs. Going back to school was the biggest issue for me, and I wasn't the only adult Aboriginal person that went back to school. There was a number of us that went back to school, and we're on that same path, and we're able to support each other and work together with each other, and I think that's what helped us get through and obtain the level of education that we did. It wasn't a university degree; it was obviously in TAFE. But it certainly gave me the skills and the ability to go on and do other things. We were deprived of speaking our language. We weren't allowed to speak our language. It was against the law to speak our language. So when you lose your language, you practically lose your identity. The only thing they knew that we had was the colour of our skin. We weren't allowed to practice our customs, our ceremonies. We weren't able to protect and care for our sacred sites. So this made it difficult for us to keep our hold on the land and keep our hold on things that were important to us. Every effort was taken to assimilate us to be like non-Aboriginal people. I think that one of the most important things that this university and individuals can do is be an advocate for Aboriginal people. Let Australia, non-Aboriginal Australia, know that Aboriginal people lived in harmony with this land. Let them understand their history. We have the oldest living culture on this planet, something that we all should be proud of. Racism's, we weren't born with racism, it's practiced. It was taught. And if it can be taught, somebody can change those attitudes towards people and say, well, look, provide a better understanding. And the way to do that is for people to call it out and say, not in a way that makes people feel guilty. I think pride and blame needs to stay outside the door. We don't want to come across as raving racist lunatics. We want to work with the community and with non-Aboriginal Australia and say, we have something to offer this country. Like I said, we have the oldest living culture on this land. We lived in harmony with this land. We've got so much to offer. Let us do it together, because the way we can do it is through education, because education is the gateway to opportunity.